Okay, hi. Hello, Katrina.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm so happy that we're here. As we were even talking before we started recording, I feel like this particular topic is just the topic that we need to talk about more and more and more is how is it that we reconnect with old wisdom, uh, right? And how do we kind of remember the things that are going to be so important to have help us navigate today and think about how do we explore tomorrow. So thank you so much for being here for this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. These conversations are always something I like to circle back to regularly. So it's nice to revisit to help me to recenter, especially starting a new year.
Let's do it. Okay, before we jump into questions, let me read kind of the formal piece, their bio. Um, Katrina Johnson is a proud Bunda woman from Goreng Goreng people of Australia. Katrina's heritage and knowledge passed down to her from generation to generation inform her leadership, education, and business practices. A senior lecturer and co-director of the Masters of Indigenous Business Leadership at Monash University in Australia and co-managing director of Market Enterprises USA with her husband, Mark. She uses Indigenous terms of reference to lead, co-design, and engage in business leadership. She focuses on generating prosperity for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples globally using an investment approach that is informed by justice, human rights, economic parity, cultural capability, and self-determination. I love those. A Harvard Kennedy School executive education graduate and teaching fellow, she utilizes her qualifications to engage with community, corporate, government, and business domains. One of her proudest achievements is being a third generation breast cancer survivor. Congratulations.
Thank
Katrina and
you.
her husband Mark live on the lands of Waccamaw Siouan people of North Carolina, and together they have 4 children. Welcome. It's like there's so many things to there's so many things to take from that bio. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing it. It's good, good, good stuff.
Yeah,
Where to start?
yeah.
Where
It's
to
hard to
start?
keep your life 50 plus years into like 100 words, right?
Well, if you got 50 plus years, we're all trying to be like you because you you definitely don't seem like 50 plus. Do you have a filter? Is that a filter? No, I'm just kidding because I've seen you in person. I know that that's the real thing. You're the real thing.
Good genes, good genes.
So let me ask a question to get us started.
Mm,
The topic is kind of old wisdom, right? It's really about
yeah,
how is it that we uh, learn from and recenter wisdom that we've had for a long time, that
yeah.
for in a lot of ways we've lost track of, and it doesn't inform our life on a day-to-day basis anymore, but that it's time for us to potentially kind of get back to it. So with that in mind, I'm just going to start off with something that's a little bit more personal, and then we'll open up into the broader topic. For me, I've seen you speak many times, and you always begin with an introduction of yourself, like in the bio that I just shared,
Mhm.
yourself, your ancestors, and the land. So tell us, why is that important? And how does that self and context acknowledgement apply to contemporary leadership practices from any cultural group, regardless of whether or not I'm Indigenous background or not?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, where that comes from is I was taught at a very young age from my elders and ancestors. One that, honoring somebody, you do that by showing. And so you use your voice to be able to do that. And so part of our ceremonial traditions as First Peoples of Australia is that when you greet somebody, you acknowledge their ancestors and their elders, you acknowledge their lands, their skies, and their waters, their spiritual beliefs as you come onto that land. It's like, extending your hand as you like a handshake. It's a greeting that you give to be able to first of all acknowledge, those that have come before you, that have come before us, laid the ground for us to even have this interaction right now. And I always say that to people. It's not just by chance that you and I are on this call today. There are a lot of people who have gone before us that have, through their blood, sweat, and tears, made opportunities for us to be able to come together today and have these conversations. If they hadn't have done that, and if we don't pay honor to that, which is what I was taught, that in every day-to-day living, whether it be, life choices, business choices, whatever they are, staying grounded and deeply rooting and continuing the practice of that is really important for, future generations, our generation now, those that are taking care of the earth. Um, and so it's something that I've been taught, and so I continue to uphold it in every space that I go to. And whether am on my country, and we use the word country in Australia as in the traditional, as being a custodian, and we don't call it a traditional owner. We say that we are custodians of the land. We care for it as it cares for us. So we're here to take care of it until we, move on out of this world and into the next. And so we do that to be able to bring honor. And for me personally, it regrounds me every single time I even come into like a business meeting. No, it doesn't matter who I'm having that business meeting with. It reminds me of, why I'm there. I'm not just there for myself. Every decision, every discussion needs to make sure that we're incorporating and thinking about, the land around us, the skies and the waters, every other living thing, because those decisions will have impact. And so, am I being a good custodian? So it reminds me of why I'm in that conversation.
First of all, I just have chills listening to it. I mean, I know this is, we interact regularly, so I'm familiar with this. And I also, have some sense kind of intellectually, but when I'm listening to you here and now, and I'm thinking about the implications for all of us, I was reminded of a conference that I was at last week. I gave a keynote presentation, and there was another person who was the morning keynote. I was the evening keynote. And this presenter, fantastic, kind of fact-filled, really great, but talked about how the presence of loneliness is at an all-time high. And even in my work, which you also are very connected to, and so you know this, the words imposter syndrome come up over and over and over and over. And I think about when we think about like how people feel either isolated or like imposters, that sometimes it's the word, we've forgotten where we're coming from. We've forgotten what we're connected to and the strength that's associated with that, right? It's not, and I'm not saying strength like you have to bear the burdens of the world on our shoulder, right? That's not desirable either, but it's, we didn't get here on accident. Like this, we're not faint of heart, right? And that when I walk into a space, I bring with me a lot. And that's important for me to know, right? And for me to internalize and for me to hold on to as I try to show up in new spaces or in new ways or in ways that allow me to have the impact I want. So that's part of what I was thinking is, but what a beautiful kind of empowering opportunity for all of us. And then, of course, in context of, we are also not just here serving ourselves and our own purposes, right? We are here as part of an ecosystem that requires us to be very intentional and conscientious about how it is that we interact and how it is that we give gratitude for the relationship.
Exactly. And it's one of those, because again, in Indigenous, when we talk about terms of reference, and that's how we would do business, it's all built on relationship. And so if you don't make time to pause and be able to make that connection, and first of all, it has to be able to honor the people that are in the room that are giving up their time, what they bring to the table, it's acknowledging that. I believe it just sets an atmosphere. Whether you're coming into a room for a business meeting or you're a negotiation, or whether it's even in conflict management, if you're able to set the scene and create an atmosphere that acknowledges and honors first, even if you don't like the other person on the opposite side of the table, you still have an opportunity to acknowledge, who they are, where they've come from, and their peoples. And what they bring to the table. And I find that sometimes when there's a heavy atmosphere, it can just create this shift, this beautiful shift, which helps people to relax and be able to engage better.
It's also, and we use in our kind of day-to-day interactions in workplaces, in workforce development, and in human effectiveness, we talk all the time about things like emotional intelligence and empathy,
Hmm.
but we don't pause. Like, how do you have empathy if there's not a pause to actually see the other person, right? And just knowing your name and how to pronounce it correctly is not the same as, can I actually create a space for honoring who you are? And I love and I appreciate so much. I don't have to like all parts of it, right? And I know that that always exists, but there is some part that requires us to honor us being in this space together, and that's a beautiful kind of reminder, but it's also a beautiful practice. Like, I feel like we could use more of it in this world right now.
Exactly. I mean, again, you can use that, whether you're in the supermarket, a grocery store, any type of interaction, really. And it just helps to break down walls that continue to be built up within, all the circles that we're moving in. And so we have to find ways. And again, for me, I tend to use the word ancient, the ancient wisdoms, and that, while they may be old, they have an opportunity and they have a usefulness for all of us to be able to, and I always say, lean back into them, or if you have to, reach right back and find them. If you've lost them or you've lost connection with them, go and find them again, because your old people have things that we can learn from and that we desperately need during, the times that we're going through right now.
Yes, I love that. Yes, old people, they know.
Hmm.
And by the way, they've been here. They're like, child, please.
Exactly. Yeah.
I remember my daddy used to talk to me about walking, 18 miles each direction to get to school. And I would tease him and be like, yeah, yeah. There were 18 of them though. Like, there was a very different life. And recently I was in Morocco, and I was spending time with Berber people in High Atlas
Yeah.
Mountains. And it was so amazing. And I was
Mm.
watching the path to school,
Yeah.
right? And these little children, 4 years old, 2 or 3 miles, and the path to school with all these kind of unstable,
Mm.
surfaces, do 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 do, and everybody's fine. And I'm like, you know what? It's so important to have that perspective and to have people who have lived experiences and who can tell us stories, even if it's not our experience, about what an alternate experience or reality is, because it made me feel strong. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not
Yeah.
fragile after all. Like, I'm not nearly as fragile as I thought I was if this 4-year-old can do this, right? It just is so helpful to like be in those spaces and to remember with people who can
Yes.
remind us.
Yeah.
Mm,
Exactly. And I know that's in a lot of our business settings, community and in family life. We're told that and taught that our elders are to be at the table whenever a major decision is to be made. And we also include our young people because they have a wisdom as well. They bring a different set of knowledge. And so that inclusiveness, I know we talk about, inclusiveness all the time and the place of belonging, and do old people have a place in business anymore, and their knowledge, that's old school works, people. Like, I just say, like, don't dismiss the old people. They may not be, operating and, using like technology and things like that we are, but their wisdoms have lasted a long time, and they've been handed down generation to generation, and they've gone through things that we haven't gone through. They've helped, ancient, cultures survive and thrive. They have wisdoms that if we would only take a moment to sit with them and talk to them about, doesn't matter how high level, they have some really unique ways of being able to deal with some really complicated, seriously complicated issues and things that are happening in our world right now. If we would make the time to sit and talk to them, I think they would be able to help us a lot.
oh my goodness, I love this. Yes. This is a
Mhm.
good reminder. Like, I'm thinking about just, the pace of life. I remember, my father would always tell me, like, baby, slow down. And I'm like, Daddy, don't say that to me. Like, just stop. I have stuff to do. And he's like, baby, trust me, slow down. And like, it almost brings tears to my eyes to think about it, because now here I am in my mid 50s, and I'm like, damn, if he didn't know, I should, like, like he's right. And it's like you can't outrun time. Like things are going to happen the way that they're going to happen, and
Yeah.
there's things that we need to know and understand, but we also, there's a perspective that comes with age and wisdom that's so important for me to remember, but also for us to remember, because I do feel like we have kind of bias towards either youth or action or speed or whatever that is. We have biases in that direction. It's just so important for us to remember the balance.
Yeah,
You,
exactly. Yeah.
mm,
And it's making the time for that, which means we have to slow down. So your dad's advice was really pertinent and important for us to remind. Yeah. I mean, I know that my grandfather and grandmother in particular, my parents even now, and my mum would say, sweetheart, just slow down. And I'm like, but mum, there's so much to be done. Like, and
yes.
there's a million things. If there could be two of me, I could get so much more accomplished. It's just like, that's not the point. You're here for a purpose. You fulfill what your purpose is. The next person and those around you will do what they need to do as well. And so, but you have to take care of you. You've got to be able to pause for a minute, take some time to be able to reflect. And again, these are all things we use all this like really contemporary practices now, which have some really fantastic, names attached to them and titles and labels. But really, the old people and, old people have been using this for a long time.
Right, right. Yes.
Yeah.
All this
And
new wave stuff, like, oh baby, please. People been meditating for years. Like this is not new. Like nobody,
that's right.
you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's so nice that you just wrote a book on how to slow down, right? Whatever
I
it is, like I'm
know.
with you,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm not disparaging that. I'm just saying
No.
like we don't have to invent something, that we just need to remember and listen and honor. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of knowledge out there that we just haven't accessed yet. And it's sitting there waiting for us to, I like the word awaken because it's never lost. It's just sleeping. And we use that word with our languages back in Australia, our traditional languages, because a lot of them were put to sleep because during times of colonization, um, we weren't allowed to speak our languages. And so our people now use the word they were just asleep and we're awakening them.
Yes.
And so we just have to awaken those things, like those knowledge systems that are out there for us. But yeah, we have to slow down first to do that.
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
I'm going to shift gears a little bit.
yeah,
But I'm very interested. I've talked to you some about this. I just am so excited about this, but I'd love to, have you just explain it a little bit more. You're one of the creators of a business leadership master's program for Indigenous peoples in Australia. And you've talked to me about the importance of kind of understanding and incorporating Indigenous ideas and philosophy and practices into business. But what does that look like, right? So when you're actually doing the work in the business school, what are some of the attributes of business practices that center Indigenous wisdom or
yeah,
ancient wisdom?
yeah. So we always, fortunately, when I started my work with Monash University, when this was first proposed, it was a group of people in a room that were invited into a room to co-design. And so it starts right there. And from the outset, it was first peoples, have to be first to be able to make this a success. And so first people's knowledges were invited first before business knowledges, before, academics who have been teaching business for their whole of their life, like 30 plus years, this is their career. It was, we want to hear from our Indigenous business leaders first. And so, again, bringing that to the table and that approach was really important to be able to make this a success. And so, again, it's setting the scene to enable First Nations peoples to be able to step into a room knowing that they can actually, it's safe for them to be able to be really brave to, I'm going to share everything that I have and I'm going to bring all of that knowledge into the room. And it's safe for me to do that in a space historically, traditionally, where Indigenous peoples have not felt welcome before in a business school, let alone universities. In particular, in Australia, we're really now only seeing our young people, graduate school and go straight into university. Whereas we have students in, this business course that are in their 60s because they were never given the opportunity to study at university, or there were so many barriers. And so in those them environments, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, were so unsafe for them to be in, and they weren't welcome. This is their first opportunity to come back and be able to, get that qualification that they deserve to have it, but have just never been given an opportunity. And so when we look at it from a business perspective, we do the same thing even within the content of the program and how we, develop it and deliver it. So there's always an Indigenous lead in the program. So whether that be law or accounting or, leadership, whatever it may be, there's always an Indigenous business leader in that room co-facilitating the education. We have elders and residents who have been business leaders, since they were like in their teens, and activists that have run business, and we have them in the space again, being able to share their wisdom and support and challenge our up and coming business leaders to be able to help decolonize themselves first, because we've lived under colonization that we don't realize that we've come to accept. Well, that's just the way that it's done. And so I will often sit in the back of the room while, my non-Indigenous academics are teaching, and I'll see the students kind of like, yes, this is really good, or I really like this framework, whatever it may be. And then I'll just pop my hand up and say, do you really think that that's the best way to be able to analyze using, Porter's five forces, to analyze that for Indigenous organizations and business? Like, is there something that's missing? And then students will go, well, actually, now that you've said that, there's nothing there to measure what we value when it comes to wealth. There's nothing there to measure things around spirituality. There's nothing there to about, holistic well-being. There's not things, oh, okay. And so then what we would do is we would then say to them, well, then we have all of these brilliant, business analytical tools, but they don't meet the needs of Indigenous peoples. So what do we need to do? So what we say to them is just go create your own. And so then what they do is they're taking contemporary business, knowledge and intelligence, and they're matching it with our ancient intelligence and knowledges, and being able to create something that they can use in the contemporary world. But it's rooted very deeply in their histories, in their knowledges, and about how they want to do business. And so that interaction really is what I believe it gives the people, the leaders, because they're already leaders in their own right. They're not just students, they are students, but they're already leaders doing this. But what it helps them to do is they walk out with being able to have a confidence and mastering contemporary business, in that sense, but as well as leaning into their ancient histories and how their people have done business, and they can then decide how I want to do business. What is it when I come into a business meeting, when I want to do a negotiating, when I'm, working with government, or I want to, start my own business. How do I want to set it up?
Yep.
What does it have to have so that it honors, my traditions and my culture, as well as be really successful?
Mm. I love this. And I also, back to the comment that we were making before, is this is also very much kind of where the world is going, right? Where there's a much more whole, or kind of whole person
Yeah.
perspective that's being taken. That's not just, business for profit, and also brings in spirituality and well-being and relationship with our planet and the environment around us. It's just all like beautifully threading forward. But I love the description of the way you're saying it, is that it's also kind of facilitating out from people their own wisdom, right? It's not saying, no, like this is what we would add to this, or this doesn't work for us. It's instead asking kind of the question that allows for people to start that awakening process, to go, oh, actually, that's beautiful, because that's where it's co-created. That's where it actually creates like the momentum and the energy that's going to allow this to not just blossom, but to also continue to be present and flourish in this environment. Very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's some really good things that we can learn from each other. And so there's a lot of great things that have happened, through this course since it was launched 5 years ago. But some of the things that we weren't expecting was that, we have our non-Indigenous academics now being able to take what they've learned in that, and it filters over to then how they teach all of their other units across the university because they've seen the value.
Mm.
And then, of course, we see, Indigenous business leaders, working alongside non-Indigenous business leaders in the same space, taking their rightful place of where they need to be. And so, and that's what we want. We just want people to be in their rightful place and position to be able to lead our communities, our businesses, our nations, in the right direction. And so, again, it's a learning, but it's about, I think it's creating environments and spaces where people feel like they can unlock some doors that have been closed.
Yep.
And that's a really fantastic thing sometimes to sit back and just to watch it all unfold. And to witness that is a real privilege and an honor.
I love it. Well, I think about um the kind of the formula for like debiasing, an individual, right? To like the removal of bias happens when people are able to come together around a shared goal in ways that they also appreciate the value add of each contributor, and they're seeing themselves as peers, right? So there has to be a shared goal, there has to be a peerness, and there has to be a reciprocity. Those
Yeah,
three things must happen. And so the way that you're describing it, that exists here, and the benefit is for everyone, including the non-Indigenous academics who are now like, oh my goodness, I've had such a kind of a short-sighted view, or I've just been taking these works that have been handed down to me for generations sometimes as like the seminal work on this topic or that topic in
yes,
business, and realizing that there's a whole nother layer of filters and perceptions and experiences that can and should make this better, right? And
yes.
that's absolutely a beautiful outcome. I love that.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
we're seeing some really good outcomes of that, the impacts of what a course like this can do for,
Yeah.
First Nations people who have historically been sidelined, and kept out of, business in particular, in this sense, and leadership across our nation, what an impact that it can have, by bringing Indigenous peoples from across the country, many of them who don't know each other, so they're complete strangers. But like you said, we all come into that space with something in common. We find those shared values, and then we build that learning together. We don't always get it right, and there's bumps in the road, but we make sure that we bring ourselves back to but why are we here?
Yep.
And so, is that worth fighting for? Is that worth pushing through this challenge? Is it worth pushing through the uncomfortability? Yes, it is.
Yes,
And
it
so
is.
we do that together.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So you recently, I think also as part of the Monash experience, took a group of students to Canada to meet
Mhm.
with elders. And I remember I remember us emailing or something while you were there, so I never got the full download. What were some of the nuggets of wisdom and brilliance that you learned on that visit?
Yeah, well, there were many, but one that comes to mind is when we were meeting with an Indigenous business leader. His name is Derek Bruno from the Edmonton area. And again, a knowledge that was handed down to him. Um, and we often have people say, what's the right way? Well, what's the right thing to do here? And his elders taught him that it was the phrase that we should be using is, what is the good way? And I saw everyone in the room at that time just sort of sit back and just breathe for a moment and go, that in itself, it's not about who, because we're always fighting about who's right, what's the right, but what's the good way to do something. And I think that resonated with a lot of people in the room. And for me, that's something that I've definitely taken on board. Um, and again, it was, observing and watching and learning from the Indigenous peoples within across Canada. And again, they're in all different types of positions of leadership. But it was spending time with some of their old people, again, making time for that, allowing them to share their wisdoms with us. And, what is it you think that we need to do? Learning from, some of the challenges that they have been through that we could learn from. Um, and again, it was always, again, making the time to stop, listen, make time, make sure that you're listening to other voices. And you're doing that with, an open heart, with open hands, and with an open mind. And be willing to engage in those two-way conversations constantly in the sharing of the knowledge. But the resilience, again, standing on the resilience of others who have, fought for what we have now. And then, they would say to us, you have to use what's around you. you know, Make sure you have a look. You don't have to actually invent a lot of things. Take a look at the resources around you. There's a lot around you to be able to use for what you need right now. And again, but if you don't stop and take a look at your people, what assets do they have lying within them that you just haven't paid the attention to? That you don't know what you don't have unless you actually make time to have a look, and to do those things. And so it really was a really good reminder, I think, for all of us, to again, just to assess how we're doing business, how we're making decisions, how we're leading, and is it the good way? Because it's not really about me being right. Is it good? Is it good for me? Is it good for the people who I'm serving and leading? Is it good for our nation? Is it good for, sustainability? All of those sorts of things. If it's good, then it's a good decision. Let's go with that. Doesn't matter who's right.
Yes, that is an incredibly powerful takeaway. I'm
Mm.
glad you didn't tell me that before, because it definitely, like, the full impact just is still sitting in with me. It's really good. Um, One of the things that, just to kind of round out our conversation, is thinking about, what are you, as a person who is a facilitator, as a person who spends a lot of different time with students of all ages, with elders and wisdom, what are some of the things that people, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, all of us, might take away from some of the wisdom that we're talking about here? How could we incorporate it? Some of the things that I've heard are slow down and pay attention. Uh, think about the question we're asking, and is there a different way to potentially reframe that, right? Look around at what we already have, right? It's not everything is coming from a place of deficit. We probably have resources that we can take advantage of right around us. Are there other things, though, that we should be thinking about as we think about our own individual kind of leadership and effectiveness in times like now, in times that are continuously changing, right? We're always going to be in a changing environment. What could we be doing more of or differently on a personal level?
Yeah. I think on a personal level, if you're engaged in any type of business or leadership, um, making the time to focus on how you want to build relationship, because it will be relationship that will see you through whether a program, a project, a business falls apart or not, or whether it is successful. It'll be the relationship that will last. And it'll be those relationships that you will need to keep coming back to time and time and time again on your journey throughout your career, beyond your career, to be able to have to create, an impact. One of the things that I've come to learn, probably in the last 12 months, when I think about the work that I've been involved in the last 5 years, is that, I'm not here to build, um, I'm not here to build empires. I'm here to build legacy. And so if I can help other people do the same thing, because empires will fall. We've seen in history, empires come and go. Legacy lives on forever. And so what I talk to people about, is, even in business, if I'm your business coach, you're still creating a legacy. It's not always a personal thing, but sometimes it's, what are the legacies that we want to continue that others have created and have passed on to us. So we feel an obligation to carry. And how, again, how can I do that a good way? How can I make sure that I'm doing my part so that when I hand it over to somebody else, that they're going to want to take up that legacy and build it when I'm gone, when I hang up my hat, when I retire, the succession planning, all of those sorts of things. Um, or the other thing is that what legacy do I want to create? And then being able to do that, and through that lens, though, then be able to say, again, when we're thinking in business, I want to be able to do a negotiation. Succession planning is a big one. The best way that's going to work again is through relationship. And so making time to be able to build in to our business and leadership and organizational operations and processes, ways that we can genuinely, sincerely, meaningfully make connection and build relationship with one another, because it'll be out of that. These are the things that I have experienced and witnessed and seen. When we do that, when we make time to do that, people will offer up from themselves things that they may have held for a very long time because they just haven't felt like I have a place to do that. That's not my place. That's not my title. That's not my pay grade. But guess what? You build relationship across your organization. What you will see is things emerge across your organization. You can have some of the most complicated issues and challenges happening in business. If you open the door to build those relationships with your people, they're going to have the answers to do that. And so I guess that would be one of the things that I'd love to see us doing more, across all levels, whether it's in, politics or family life. Let's start with our families first. It's a good place to practice. I always say to people, practice everything that I would ever share with you, practice it with, your friends and your family first. See if it works. If it doesn't work with them, probably not going to work in business. But, we try these things. We have to keep trying and keep coming back to it. And again, making sure that you're making it your own. Put your own fingerprint on it. Don't just take something that somebody else has done and then be, well, that's going to work for us. That's not what it is. You have to be able to draw on what you have within you to be able to do that. Um, and again, we talk a lot about corporate social responsibility. We talk a lot about sustainability. Um, we already have practices that are ancient, that if we only just adopted them, if we only just took time to build them into, our business plans, our strategic plans, all of those sorts of things, we would see the implications of those things. They would roll out with a lot more ease and without a lot, we don't have to put in a lot of effort. You put the hard work in early and the rest of it will then just flow.
Yep.
So that's always my encouragement, is definitely around build relationship with your people, build relationship with your community, build relationship with land, sky, water, your indigenous peoples. If you're working on, other people's land and country, make some time to go and find out. Google is your friend, people. Google is your friend.
Yes. Yes.
It's not hard to find out what lands, traditional lands that you're on. Start acknowledging it. You don't have to wait for somebody, to be able to say that that's something mandatory that you have to do. You want to build relationship with people and you want business to go well, then start, practicing those things.
Mm, I love it. Great takeaways. Absolutely great takeaways. And all of it is, it's all filled with intention, and it's also all available to us already. This is
Yeah.
not like we have to go find all the new books, right? This
Nope.
is all just get quiet, remember, allow that awakening to happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. And be ready to
Most
hear the
affirmation.
stories over and over and over again. I mean, I don't know about your old people, Dieta, but as growing up and I still now with my old people, they'll tell the same stories
Oh yeah.
over and over again. And our little kids will go, "Oh, I've heard that story before." And you're like, "Yeah, but you've got to hear it again and again and again as an adult, as an older person, as you're growing up and coming through, as you're maturing, because there's lessons that you
Oh yeah.
didn't when you were little.
Oh yeah.
There's things in that, and so embrace those stories because they hold a lot of wisdom. And so I think if we can get back to making some time for storytelling,
Hmm.
uh, I think our world will be definitely a better place.
Oh my goodness. It took me right back to my daddy again, thinking of all this funny stuff. Well, and that's it, right? The stories and the things that, when you're little, you're like, "Oh, they're quirky or they're frustrating." But
That's right.
then over time, they're endearing. And then when they're gone, they're
Yeah.
the most beautiful gift, right?
Yeah.
And also the thing that we then pass on as the most beautiful gift to our children and to our family and to
That's
our
right.
friends. So
Yeah.
it's the stories are so incredibly important and they
Yeah.
make us who we are, right? Those are the things that help us have a sense of connection to a history and an identity and a family and a context, right? And so I love just remembering that again. It definitely strikes a chord with me.
Yeah, makes a big difference. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Most of it we say, we have been taught that it's in textbooks, and that's where you get your knowledge and your intelligence from is by reading this and go research that. Um, at the end of the day, what I have learned more than anything is that I can read as many books as I like, but they're not going to be able to equip me for what I need to do. I need to be able to hear from those that have gone before me about how they applied that knowledge.
Mhm.
And so again, I still believe that our people are our greatest resource. That's where our intelligence lies, AI and all of it. That's we still have so much within us that's left, to be accessed and resourced. And I really believe that's where again, let's make the time to get to really get to know people. And then we'll see, I believe we'll see, the ripple effect of that even after we're gone.
I agree. I
Mm.
agree. I absolutely agree. Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. I just feel like I don't know, I feel light and hopeful and also just like just reconnected. Every time I talk to you, we had another conversation yesterday in another space, and I just remember it was just such a grounding conversation, and it's so wonderful to be able to just feel grounded in a world and have grounded
Mm.
wisdom and perspective shared with us in a world that's moving very fast. So thank you
Yes.
so much for this beautiful wisdom.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the conversation. It's always enjoyable catching up with you and talking through these things. I'll probably go away now, reflect a little bit more, and be able to refine myself through that. But thank you. It's been wonderful.